Good evening, everyone. This is Financial Literacy 101. And this evening, I have a special treat for you guys. We'll be going live with Arthur Jones. He'll be breaking down some very important things that I think you guys should absolutely know. We're going to be talking about group economics and also all of these recent government mandates that I think that we need to have some power. We need to have some information on how to combat this and fight them with their own tools and tricks. So let's see what the brother got to say. Let's chop it up and get the information, ask your questions, and we'll get right into it. All right. So we're back. Let me bring Arthur Jones into the room. Mr. Jones, how you doing, sir?
I'm excellent. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Tell the people a little bit about yourself, sir.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Arthur Jones. I work with the N. Jones Agency Incorporated. We are economics and financial management and literacy company. My dynamic in the company is asset protections. The way we keep people kill. My partner, she handles literally everything financial. That is your accounting, your taxes, tax strategy, tax planning, everything that it would take for you to comply with your businesses and not have to worry about coming back and taking those things that you amass. The asset protection dynamic is there's no generational wealth unless you can actually protect those assets, accumulate them. And I'm sorry, a bill is simply ineffective. I just want to jump right in.
Yeah, go ahead, brother. So let's start off with group economics. We understand that group economics is basically gathering our money together. But I want to let you define your take on group economics and how you believe that would be profitable for us or any group of people.
Okay. The way that it works in general is first we got to look at a couple of things. We got to get a couple of things that they're just bad economic practices or principles that have been put out there into our society. So one of the first ones I want to cover, and these are consumer concepts. One of the first consumer concepts I want to cover is individual ownership. It is an absolutely horrible concept. This individual ownership means all the liability is tied directly to you. Whenever you own a thing, whenever you accept money for the thing, whenever you're doing business, there is an innate liability that goes on with that doing business. So what happens is, say, I don't want to stick to this first, and then I'll go back and give some scenarios later. So the dynamics behind what economics works the best is in a family. See, most people have not done a family talent evaluation, family skill evaluation. So if you look inside of your family, you generally have people you look to provide a lot of the things that your business is still need in order to grow. So marketing, graphics designs, websites, social media, all of these things should be handled internally. Matter of fact, anything that you have that you're outsourcing, you want to insource that first before you start outsourcing the things. The money that's inside your family, it keeps the money inside of your community, and not so much as an external community, but that internal community.
Hey, brother, let me just interrupt you for 1 second. My moderator is telling me we have choppy sound. Is there anything else? You think you can just go off the computer mic?
Okay. Yeah. Let me see if I can go off. All right. Is that better?
Yeah, you might want to increase the mic volume on it, but I can hear you, but it's somewhat low.
Okay. All right. Well, this is what I'll do. I'll mute my cam and move my mic to me. How about that? All right.
Give us 1 second, family. This brother have a lot of good information. We're having some sound issues. He's trying to fix it very quickly. So stay with us. You do not want to miss this, because at the end of this, I will be taking requests, giving you guys free credit letters. And also, Mr. Jones has a letter for you guys who are being threatened who are being coerced. When it comes to your job, he has an actual legalese letter where they would assist you in getting those exemptions that some of you may want, okay, from your job, from your business, okay. So, Mr. Jones, are you still there, sir?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Is this better?
Yeah. My moderator says it's low, but it's clear. Is there anything else
Okay.
you can do just to be a little bit louder?
All right. Let me see here. Is that better? I'm trying to situate my microphone where to be in a better position. Is that better?
Yeah, I think it's just your volume, sir. That's all. We can hear you clearly now. There's no choppiness, but
Okay.
it's just low.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna speak with my outside voice. How about that?
Try that.
Okay.
She
So,
said it sounds better. Okay.
all right. Excellent. Okay, so the dynamic by which this works the most efficiently is based on the family, the internal structure. So if we look at the people who have been successful in our country over an extended period of time, 100 years or better, those people all operate under a thing called a trust. Now, I personally like the irrevocable revocable because as long as you are alive, it is revocable. As long as you are in your proper compos mentis, your right state of mind, you can make changes, you can alter different things about it. But if you ever become incapacitated, if you pass, then that thing becomes irrevocable and no changes can be made, or they can, but it is extremely difficult to change those tenets of the trust. So what I'll do is I'll give you a breakdown of how this works and to create the generational wealth and the group economic dynamic. So the trust is a legal entity. It is an ens legis. It is in existence only by law, by the paperwork that you draft to create it. The trust has all of the rights and powers that any living person has. So the trust can own all properties. So what happens is under that trust, all of our real property, that's all of our houses, all of our land, all of our things of that nature, they would go, the trust would own those. So instead of your name being on the bill of sale, that'll be the trust. Instead of your name as the incorporator, that'll be the trust. The trust will also own any intellectual property. That is all written material. So if you draft or draw, if you paint, if you write manuscripts or books, if you invent a thing or you patent a thing, or if you have trademarks for unique names or logos, the trust will own all of those as well. It will also own any law, any land that you have, because the trust
Where will the
can.
people go to actually form a trust?
Oh, well, this the thing. You really don't have to go to a whole bunch of people for real to form one. Um, you can do it with a bank. You can do it with an attorney. You can do it with an accountant. But you need to know what you're doing before you go to these people, because remember, all of these people operate under an oath, and their oath is not to protect your assets; it's to protect the industry. So you want to get your land, any trade instruments. So any fiduciary accounts, any bitcoins, or any of these type of dynamics. Those things you want them owned by the trust, as well as any rights, land rights, water rights, mineral rights, air rights. Any of these things, all of them belong to the trust. The trust will be divided into three subtrusts. The subtrusts are a non-profit, a corporate, and a family subtrust.
Would we have to essentially create a business to create one of these trusts, or is there, nowadays everything is electronic? Is there a website? Is there
Yeah,
an
you can do it
institution where we
electronically.
go to actually create these trusts?
Yeah, you can do it electronically. Yeah, the Secretary of State will be happy to take a trust file just about any way. You just got to file it and have your ducks in a row when you do. So what we'll do is under the corporate trust, and what I'm going to do, I'll explain each one of the subtrusts and why they're necessary. Because remember, we're creating group economics and generational wealth. So, under the corporate side of the trust, there will be, and the people in this corporate side of this trust should be family. If you do not have the family to put them in there and you outsource this or you hire professionals in these positions, then you know exactly what to incentivize in the family. So, under the corporate side, we will have finance, legal, accounting, human resources, customer resource management, information technology, marketing, contracting, and security. Those will all be under that corporate dynamic of the trust. This is also where the risk mitigation is done. Your risk mitigation for your taxes, your regulatory agencies, any statutory agencies, and civil risks. All of those are going to be done at this place. And they're going to go through the contracting department, the people in the accounting department, and the legal department, the finance. They're going to all go through and make sure you have the least amount of exposure that you can possibly have dealing coming through the family. This is also where your loss mitigation practices are put in place. So if you want to minimize your loss for your profit and loss financial statements, for your production, any spillage, where your projections come from, this all comes from this financial center under the corporate part of this trust. Now, everyone in the family who works inside of this corporation, everybody who works in finance, legal, accounting, HR, and all of those name sections, they have a responsibility to do on the job training for everybody in the family, the beneficiaries and the trustees who are going to come up through the trust. Because eventually you're going to age in and out of these positions. So by you doing on the job training, education, corporate mentoring, this guarantees that you have another generation of blood coming into those positions to manage that trust, manage the assets and the businesses that the family has established. So there are 8 businesses that every trust or every family should have. One, real estate and real estate development.
Definitely.
2, agriculture and farming. 3, construction and contracting. 4, entertainment, media, and publishing. 5, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. 6, healthcare management services, and that is from birth to death and everything in between. Um, 7, transportation, logistics, and maintenance. Everybody in the family got to drive something. We got to get somewhere. We need that internal. I don't care if it's a car lot, those cars should come through the family. It should be a family car lot. And when we in the family are getting cars, we go into our car lot to get those cars. And when those cars are maintained, we're maintaining them.
Exactly.
And finally, food services, because everybody got to eat.
Wow.
So,
I guess some of the main questions my audience will love to hear is, and I understand the business aspect of it, but when we're talking about those trusts and those sub trusts, is where do we go to create these, like on paper? Is it a bank? Um, is it some sort of federal or state government website that you may know of? That way people can actually go out and
okay.
create these trusts.
Well, they've got you can get a trust drafted at Legal Nature. You can get a trust drafted at Legal Zoom. It's not, the issue is not getting it drafted. It's planning out what goes in it, putting the
Mm,
rules in place that are going to govern it. Because hell, you can draft a trust in 45 minutes if you already got your stuff together. It's bringing those different dynamics together so that you know what goes where, if that makes any sense. Because it's the planning dynamics and the things that you leave out of the trust, those are the things that cost you in the future. And one of the things that I found that has an issue, if we look at 2 trusts in particular, the Kraft, KRAFT family, and the Campbell's Soup Company. Both of those
mm,
families operate under trusts. The Kraft family is structured this way, where they incentivize the family and they breed family businesses based off of that trust. So there's always a cycle of incoming coming back into the trust, as well as the benefits going out for the beneficiaries and the trustees. In the Campbell's family trust, they did not have this way. They had professional corporate management, and it just paid out to the beneficiaries and the trustees. So what happened is, as the trust came into places where, like, when the cost of goods dropped, then the amount of money that was coming into the trust to benefit the beneficiaries and the trustees, it fell off. But they still wanted the same amount of money that had been classically granted under the trust. So they ended up bankrupting their own trust.
Wow.
But now the Kraft family, what they do is they have incentivized their family members. So say little Julie Kraft, she's third generation in, and little Julie Kraft she just wants to paint pictures. Well, that's fine, because one of her great aunts already has an art gallery. They've got, under their nonprofit, they have incentives. They've got a nonprofit program for art and music. We've got a family company that does graphics, media, and publishing. Little Susie already has a job. As soon as she expresses an interest, we've already got 9 places to work little Susie, to build out that artistic nature and to put it into a place where her intellectual property for her works is protected through the family, and she has ways to generate capital based on that art. You
Wow.
feel me?
I do.
So what it
Um,
does is, go ahead.
Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're creating a cycle of wealth inside of the family. And what it does is kind of puts the family on a interdependent dynamic. So, and that's kind of how group economics works anyway. Everybody's a little interdependent on each other. So it incentivizes you to work with the family, incentivizes you to work with that group of people. So I want to go over to the nonprofit. Now, the reason you have a nonprofit under this trust is because nonprofits get grants. They get free government money, private industry money, state money, and other nonprofits. And plus, they can take donations. And what they do is, the way that nonprofits are funded, they're funded through their programs. So under our family nonprofit, we have science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Well, we know they're dumping money into those. We've got economic literacy. We've got art and music. We've got mentorship and leadership development, career development. These type of dynamics that the state is already funding third-party nonprofits to put out there and put that information out there. Where your family is, they gonna have a nonprofit, and the state gonna fund the same thing, and you're gonna funnel your kids right on through them, along with all of the other people in the community that you do the outreach for, because it doesn't look good if you're really, really rich and don't give anything back. So your nonprofit is how you paint your family with a very beautiful light, because they're committed to community wellness and the growth and the betterment of the community. You're going to make a profit while you do it, but you're committed to it.
Exactly. If you don't mind, sir, I want to shift gears here. I want to get into the heart of the discussion, something that I know you can speak volumes to, and we're going to replace a certain word that starts with a V with
Okay.
jab. Okay, we're going to replace that word with jab just for the
Okay.
YouTube algorithms. Now, I met Mr. Jones on Clubhouse, very intelligent guy. And I know lately there have been a lot of mandates, governmental mandates, a lot of organization and business mandates, and we're trying to combat that. Now, for some people, this is not pro jab or anti jab. This is not about that. It's about having the choice that you want if you want to take that jab. And for you guys who are just tuning in, the jab is essentially talking about the VAX. Okay, I won't say the word, but I'll spell it out. The VAX. Now, let's do this. A quick definition. What is a jab mandate? A jab mandate refers to imposing a consequence for jab refusal. Okay, the consequence can be a fine or denial of access to a service, job, or venues like hotels, cruise ships, and sporting events, etc. Now, Mr. Jones, what are some of the protections, or what are some of the things that people can do if they've been pressured, coerced, threatened, if they don't
Okay.
take this jab, that they will essentially lose their jobs, their careers, their pension? Can you break this down to help us further
Yes.
combat what's going on?
Okay. This is how this works. Anytime those individuals decide to issue a mandate, first thing we got to do is understand the legalese. And the reason I call it it's the legalese, because they will play word games with you. And those word games are literally based on just the wording. And the effectiveness of wording can be seen in the Civil Rights Act, where black was replaced with minority, and you see the
Yes.
effects. So, uh, what he just described when he pointed out mandate, it's called intimidation. That is 1 USC Title 44. You cannot intimidate someone into giving you their informed consent. As a matter of fact, coercion under 1 USC Title 42. There are several of these things that they have put out there into the public eye or into the public light. And the language itself is manipulative. So, if we're going to talk about the VAXX, a VAXX is defined by law as a substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or several diseases prepared from the causative agents of a disease. Okay, I'm going to say that part again, the causative agents of a disease. If it does not have those, it is not a VAXX. It is an inoculation. An inoculation is the act of inoculating or being inoculated to implant a virus, as is done in vaccines, or even to implant a toxic or harmful microorganism into something as a part of scientific research. This is the legal definition of these things. I also in this form I cover coercion as well as the fact that coercion is a criminal misdemeanor. So anyone who tells you you do this or you have to do that, that is a criminal misdemeanor. They cannot force your capitulation. Um, I also cover threat, law, policy, because a policy is not a law. A mandate is not a law. An ordinance is not a law.
So
There,
why are they using this word mandate, and it feels as though that it's a law or something we must follow, or keyword there, or this will occur.
well, a mandate is a formal order from a superior court or official to an inferior court. And to mandate something is an official order given to somebody to perform a particular task, the power given to a country to govern another country or region. So a mandate is an official order. Unfortunately, it is not a law. And see, we have to be very careful when people give you an order because under the order dynamic, then they have a responsibility for that order. So what we have drafted is we as once you get into the understanding of how UCC codes and law and commerce works, you'll learn that you always have to be willing to negotiate. So what they have done with you is offered you a negotiation even in their mandate. You have to do this or that. So we have to present them with our dynamics of a negotiable agreement. Our dynamics of a negotiable agreement are if that, then this. So if they require you to take this vax on your job, you require them to assume full liability for any health repercussions or anything that happens to you as a result of their order. And what I,
How important is the word "or" in this sense? Because I feel like if you don't do this, well, do this, or if you don't do this, or how important is that word "or" in this particular predicament?
that's what makes it coercive. That's the dynamic that gives you the intimidation. Because now they're pointing out a simple set of consequences that you will face if you do not capitulate to what they want. The fact that they even put or it's amazing how many people do not understand the dynamics by the way law or contract law in particular is done because they would have never put or in that they would have never put or in there. The
There's Mr. Jones. There's a lot of people who are being essentially threatened with their livelihood, their jobs, their careers, 401ks. They could essentially lose it all. And I know there's a lot of was it California, I believe, they are exempting. Well, excuse me, they have no exemptions for
Yes, they do.
religion.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Okay,
And I'm gonna tell you
and,
why I
and,
say
and
it.
that's why I
It's
brought this up. I know you. I know you. I want you to break that down. But they
okay.
supposedly, okay, allegedly, they don't
There you go.
have any exemptions for religion or medical exemptions.
Yeah, they tell us that, and then right in the state constitution for California, God is mentioned 6 times. So we're
Wow.
under the dynamic. Yeah, in the Constitution, they'll tell you there's no religious exemption. How is there no religious exemption in a state that is codified and quantified under its Constitution that is granted under God? We're going to have a problem, ladies and gentlemen. You can't get any of your other laws to stick if you abandon that. So, California, and I'll I've got a sheet here that I pulled up. Hopefully, my notes will go ahead and open up here for me. But I had pointed out, okay, in California's Constitution, there is ACR 13, which makes reference to God, HR 55, which makes reference to God, SB 564, which makes reference to God, AB 726, AB 314, AB 904, SB 611, AB 986. All of these references to an almighty power, but you don't accept a religious exemption. We have a
Mm,
problem.
wow.
And they're not the only ones. There are, I think it's 6 states that don't have religious exemptions, and every one of those states have God in their codifying documents that establish their law. So all of those states take religious exemption. They just don't want to act like they do. Yep, right up there. Where it says right there, grateful to Almighty God for our freedom. That part.
So they're telling people there's no religion exemptions, but even in their constitution, they mention God. So is that sort of a loophole for people to use?
Exactly.
How do they go about exercising their rights using the
Okay.
same information they're saying in order to combat this?
Okay. Well, I've drafted. It's a religious exemption request, and the religious and I made sure I pointed out the dynamics by which a religious exemption is denied. So the religious exemption to COVID-19 inoculations may be granted based on the individual's sincerely held religious belief, practices, or observances that prohibits the COVID vax. In the analysis of religious belief, practices, and observance, it includes moral and ethical beliefs as to what right and wrong, which are sincerely held with the strength of traditional religious views, social, political, and economic philosophies, as well as personal preferences, do not constitute a sincerely held religious belief. Now, what I've done is I've provided a statement and a testament to those beliefs and why those beliefs should be honored under the religious freedoms. And it basically reads, I study and practice the principles of morality as taught to me by my God through his spiritual and religious texts. I believe the Most High, that is the basis of our Constitution and the laws of God, and by the word and spirit of all that is holy, I cannot in good faith disobey the Almighty in the open display of Revelations 19 and 20. Go ahead and pull that up, brother. Since you're over there on the machine, go ahead and pull up Revelations 19 and 20.
Will do.
And I'll read it off. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that was wrought miracles before him, with which he was deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. In that man is created in the image and the likeness of God. The word and our body is clear. 1 Corinthians 15 and 44. 1 Corinthians 6 and 14. And I state and reference several dynamics by which the body and the blood are sacred, and those are the vessels of God. So what we do is we submit our religious exemption, but there is a particular way that we do this.
So
So,
I mean, yeah, that's the next step. How do we?
okay,
Because it's one thing going to saying that, hey, there's
Oh
these
no,
exemptions, whether
oh
it
no,
be
we're gonna get this
medical.
accepted. Oh no, we're
Go
gonna
ahead.
get this accepted. So what we do there, this religious exemption comes paired with a legal document. And this legal document is to whom it may concern, with respect, with specific respect to the implied or documented requirements of whatever the name of your company is, herein referred to as the company, as an organization, and the company's involvement in a clinical trial procedure performed under mandate or policy that clearly violates HIPAA privacy laws. In such an event that the herein named organization enacts or appears to enact in a policy and or mandate that requires any associates, employees, staff, students, or any other person in attendance or utilizing the facilities to be inoculated against COVID-19 specifically and any of its subsequent variants in any form. This document has been drafted in order to ascertain who bears the responsibility in the event of any negative health repercussions and what those responsibilities are.
Wow.
Due
Miss,
to
Miss,
the
Mr. Jones,
yeah,
before, give me 1 second. Now, you said one key word inside of this. You said HIPAA.
yes.
Now, please explain this HIPAA because no one is essentially using the HIPAA Act or HIPAA law against their employers to fight back. Now, are you essentially versed in HIPAA?
Oh no, no. We're just pointing out that HIPAA violations were made because anytime a person shares their medical information with a doctor, there must be a release. That doctor can't share it with another doctor. He can't share it with a nurse. They can't even share it across the hall in the same practice without there being a release of that medical information. So what makes any employer think they have the right to ask you about your medical history?
Uh-oh.
That part. So what we're doing is we're just referencing the HIPAA. The real meat of this document comes from the USC title violations. So what we do, due to the fact that these policies have been or are being implemented, an impasse has been created, and the following statements have become necessary. When in the event an institution or agency requires a thing, then reasonably that institution or agency absorbs the liability of that they require. And the reason that we put reasonably, because anytime a civil suit is decided, the bar that they measure by is called the reasonable person. What would a reasonable person do or see in that same dynamic? So we use the reasonable person dynamic. The statement as follows is what makes them accept your religious exemption. I am a natural person, a human being, the aggrieved party under 1 USC Title 1201, claiming all of my rights under natural law, constitutional law, common law, and statutory law, herein identified as the threatened party. This is where you put your name. And I, as a reasonable person, do not wish to have my DNA altered through inoculations or in any attempts to obligate myself through policy, code, or ordinance that are crafted in an intimidating or coercive manner are illegal and unlawful under federal contract law 1 USC Title 41. In the event that I am forced through this policy, force or coercion under 1 USC Title 34 and 1 USC Title 18, those are criminal codes, or any other means, method, or manner, my signature is considered as a violation of universal law and all other laws herein identified and is given under duress under 1 USC Title 41. That is completely invalidated anything they try to do to you. Because if you sign it, you have already notated and announced that your signature was taken from you and not given voluntarily. So, any agency enacting a policy requiring intrusive actions or liens upon my natural persons through mandate, policy, intimidation, or coercion, or by any way to force my free will of choice granted to be by my God, assumes full liability for any physical or mental damages upon my natural person created by God, my human body in any aspect or definition of a person under any law, statutes, codes, or ordinances. I reiterate, the company shall be held as the bearer of any and all responsibilities for any damages to my person in violation of 1 USC Title 29 labor law or any other civil law or tort law under 1 USC Title 15. That's telling you you are going to sue them if they damage you. via the vaccine injury table, 1 USC Title 47. Yes, the laws for damages and injury to people from vaccines is already documented. So, with the intention of seeking civil damages awarded, I am willing, if you so choose, to accept the enclosed religious exemption in this matter as a means of settling this impasse. Reasonably, I can expect a reply in this matter within 3 business days. The
Wow.
reason you're going to limit the amount of time they have to respond. They don't get to sit around and play with it. Any and all requests for my medical records or medical history are strictly prohibited and are reasonably considered as a blatant invasion of privacy and a violation of human rights and possibly violations of HIPAA laws. In signing this document with an endorsement, the signee attests to their ability to represent the agency herein identified and bind that agency to the obligations of this agreement. Now, what is supposed to happen is, before this is ever sent, you, as the aggrieved party, are supposed to sign and date this document. You are supposed to have 2 witnesses sign and date this document, and then a notary attach their stamp and signature. You will take this full document minus the directions page. You will put it into 3 envelopes. You will mail one of them to your supervisor, one of them to the head of the department of your agency, and one to the legal department of your company. This is mailed in a very particular way. You must mail this from your post office, the main post office in your city. It must be mailed certified mail with a signature card. And you have just gotten, with that submission, you have just gotten your religious exemption. Because the way our law works is once that person who represents that company signs for that document, they've already agreed to the shit inside.
Wow. If you will, can I show a very small portion of this letter? I see Miss Curly Girl, my moderator. She said I definitely need this letter. I just want to show the top part of this version, and I want to read off some. Is it okay if I share just a small portion of your letter, sir?
Yeah. Do you have it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Yes.
All right, so let me, if you will, let me read just a little bit on the part I really want to point out here. It says that the again, I'm a just use a key word, guys. You can read along with me. I'm just going to say the jab are legally, the people who have been jabbed are legally no longer human and can be patented. The ruling states that if a human genome is modified through mRNA, then the genome can be patented. cDNA is DNA that is created from an mRNA copy. If the mRNA is changed, then subsequent DNA is changed as well. Can you expound on that just a little bit more, sir?
Yeah, Justice Clarence Thomas, he's a naturalist. He filed this decision in 2013, where Myriad Genetics, pathology took Myriad Genetics to court. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court because they were trying to patent DNA. And because DNA is a natural occurring thing in nature, it is something that God created. No man can put a patent on that thing unless that thing is changed. So you can't patent an apple, but if you alter that apple, now you can patent that. So what happens is,
Mm.
yes, the anyone who is receiving mRNA vaccines, that spike protein is delivering messages to your DNA, which alters your natural state. You are no longer a human according to the law. Now,
So
the
according to the
scariest part
law,
of that,
just
yeah,
because
according
it's
to the
a
law, you're
jab,
not a human.
you're no longer human.
Yeah,
According to
because
the law.
well, you're patented property. Humans can't be
Wow.
patented. Nature can't be patented. You're patentable. You're a product now. And the thing is, our 95% of the laws that protect the things that we do and say are based on human rights. Your TV does not have rights. Your car don't have rights. You go flat the tire in your car, you're gonna be the one to have to absorb the liability of that flat tire.
But don't I have rights if I'm a human being, regardless
Yeah,
if I
because you're a
take the
human
jab or
being,
not?
you do. You a human being now. The minute you get that jab, you ain't a human being no more. That ain't the DNA God created. That's the stuff that they changed. I want to point out something in that letter, informed consent. Because right now we're playing and they're dancing all around this line of informed consent. Uh, Permission granted with the knowledge of the possible consequences. In order to quantify informed consent, there are four benchmarks: decision capacity, documentation of the consent. Now, documentation of consent has to be presented before you do a thing, not after. Full disclosure. They don't have disclosure of what these things contain. So how can you have consent? You
That's
can't
similar to
buy a
like the
bottle
credit
of
report.
juice. Yeah, you can't buy a bottle of juice out the store without the ingredients on the back.
That's true.
And competency, the ability of that person to make that decision based on their decision capacity, documentation, and their disclosure. Well, you can't be competent to make a decision if you don't have full disclosure. Now, can you?
That's true.
See,
But it's
these
kind
are
of similar to like when credit reporting agencies use your credit report.
oh man, that's another big fraud. That's a huge
How so?
fraud. Well, because nobody has signed a contract with Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax for them to share your information, for them to collect your information. So that is already a violation. Now, the fact that they send your information to a third party using telecommunications line, if any of that information is inaccurate, that is slander and wire fraud.
How do they get away with it?
Because people don't know what the law is. If people understood, oh, trust me, they don't always get away. My little sister, she has sued their ass multiple times. She sued them repeatedly, and they pay her because they don't want the fact that they're committing fraud on the general mass of population to get out. Think about how many cases of fraud it is. Everybody's got a credit report, and these people are sending information back and forth without your permission, and they're sending false information back and forth without your permission that affects you negatively. Yeah, fraud all over the board. But because people don't know what the law says, then they kind of get away with these things. Like again, we want to look at a code. Code is a system of communications by telegraph or heliograph, etc. And long and short sounds, it has very little to do with restricting the dynamic of a people to move. An ordinance, an authoritative rule or law or decree or command, a public injunction or regulation, something believed to have been ordained as by a deity or destiny. Under ecclesiastical law, the established rite or ceremony, a sacrament of the communion. That's an ordinance, a
Now
policy. So
I'm going
these,
along with your letter here. This is the top portion here about how you break down the difference between vaccines and inoculations, and you're saying
yes,
that basically inoculate is more general and can mean to implant a virus as
yes.
it is done in the jab.
You know what? Roll all the way down to the bottom and look up the legal definition for clinical trial.
Where is that at?
It's right above responsibility. Yes,
Here it is.
clinical trial.
Oops. Okay.
A research study in which medical treatment is carefully tested on people in order to assess how safe and effective it is. So we're getting inoculations as a part of a clinical trial.
This is a real thorough letter as well.
I want to point out indemnity. Protection against damage or loss, especially in the form of a promise to pay for damages or loss that happens. See, the companies who issue this have a PAP indemnity. The federal government has an indemnity. However, your employers do not have an indemnity. If they force a thing, they are responsible for that thing. Responsibility. The state or fact of being responsible, answerable, or accountable for something within one's power, control, or management. Ain't that your company?
Exactly.
That part. So what we're doing is we're holding them to their responsibility for that thing that they issue. If you say I got to do it, then you're going to be responsible. The problem is no one wants to be responsible because if they are, their company absorbs any civil damages that are awarded, and they can't go to the government. They got nothing for them, and they can't go to the private corporations who produce this product because they have nothing for them. So do you think your company really wants to absorb a multi-million-dollar suit? No. So they're not going to want to sign the letter. What they're going to want to do is give you the religious exemption. And that's what we're doing. It's a negotiation.
So this is essentially having leverage
Yes.
to.
Like they using your employment, your career, and your retirement as leverage to force you into a position. You're using their improper handling of this situation to force them into the one you want them in. We're playing chess.
Now, how this? I'm just curious. How long did it take you to write something so extensively?
Uh, this is well, I want to tell the truth. I
Okay.
started this at about the 4th of August because
Okay.
I had a young lady. She prompted this whole dynamic because her university was telling her either she was going to get jabbed or were going to extend her for a year and a half for her graduation, and she's literally in her last semester.
Really?
Yes. So
Extend her because she didn't get the jab.
yeah, that's what they were threatening. And the problem is they were threatening. That's what messed them up. So the dean issued a email. We took that email and I drafted this here agreement for her. And we submitted that to the dean, to the school, to the mailroom for the school, and to the legal department for the school. Within maybe say 6 days, the school made a public retraction of all of their mandates and all of their policies around inoculations. They don't even have face covering mandates at that school anymore. They got rid of all of those things. And then they politely sent her they gave her a religious exemption, even though in their original text it says no exemptions will be made in this policy. Yeah, these people can't do the thing they want to make you believe that they can do these things. But if they could have just done it, they would have just done it. They need your consent.
So what is take for instance, I work for an employer and I receive an email because that's mostly how they're communicating to their employers of, hey, we understand that the current times we're living in and we are essentially encouraging everyone. What's some of the wording that you've seen or heard of that they're using in these emails and letters to threaten, coerce, and pressure people into taking the jab?
Well, the thing is, you can't really force a person. So anytime they use uh, patent, ordinance, policy, any type of threats of force, any type of threats of reprisals, any type of intimidation, any of those methods are all illegal. So if they have anything in their way, go, well, if you don't do this, you're gonna lose your job. Oh, baby, that's illegal. If you don't do anytime they give you that either this or do that, they've already put their foot in their mouth because they're not saying that well, if you don't take the jab, then now I've seen this one, and this one skirts the line, but it's not completely illegal.
Okay.
They go, well, if you don't take the jab, then you'll be required to wear a mask at all times on the premises. And now they can do that one. They can get away with that. You can wear a mask on the premise. They get away with that. But anything
Okay.
that is invasive, anything that is internal, they cannot do. So how they go, you must be tested every week. Well, I hope I'm gonna spit in the cup because if you got to stick anything into any orifice of my body, that's illegal. You can't do that without my consent, and I do not render my consent.
But
And
what
if you
about those states that are at will states where they can like wake up one morning and just fire you? What are protections against that?
okay, we covered that in that we covered that in the law. That's why we pointed out Title 41 in there because
Uh-huh.
that's commerce and trade law. And contract law falls under commerce and trade. So everybody who has a job with an employer, you filled out an application when you first start working there. And you also got an employee's handbook that you had to sign. If you did not get an employee's handbook that you had to sign, they're already in violation. So, with that signature of an employee's handbook, does it say anywhere in that they can do any type of internal thing to your body? If it does not, then that is a breach of contract. A breach of contract is a $10,000 violation.
Ms. Color says, is the clinical trial portion of the letter void now that Pfizer is now approved by the FDA?
Pfizer ain't approved.
Well, supposedly, there's been some information that came out that Pfizer is FDA approved now.
Pull up the approval for the CDC and read it very carefully. They have approved the rebranding of Pfizer to be sold under another name. They have not approved Pfizer as a vaccine. Legalese. Legalese. They're going to sell it in a white box instead of a red one. Legalese. And even by which that dynamic, I don't care if they approve every one of them, still doesn't get past that religious exemption. Still doesn't get past the fact that they are coercing. They are forcing. They are using ordinances, policies, law, and threats of reprisals against that person for not rendering their endorsement. And all of those are highly illegal.
Now, I'm just going to read off a point here because maybe you can break some things down to us.
Sure.
It states here, as of yesterday, the FDA approved the first jab. The jab has been known as Pfizer BioNTech for the jab and will now be marketed as Comirnaty for the prevention of the current virus and disease that we're in individuals 16 years of age and older. The jab continues to be available. Oh,
see, that's what I'm talking about.
Wow.
Legalese, baby. Legalese, baby. So they get these politicians, they get these people to go on stage and only read the first part, but not the last part. That's
Let me finish this real quick, and I'll let you commentary on this. It says the jab also continues to be available under emergency use authorization, including for individuals 12 through 15 of age, and for the administration of a third dose in certain immunocompromised individuals.
Yeah, there it is, right there. You feel me? There it go, right there. They just told you. It's still under emergency use authorization. They approved them to change the packaging. See, that's the type of stuff I'm talking about. They use these slick legal terms or legalese in order to paint a picture where it looks like it's this, but it is not that thing. And then you get these disingenuous, dishonest, intellectually dishonest politicians who get on television and tell you, oh, this has been approved, but it hasn't. That's why I said, yeah, these things still attached because they're still.
And it's saying here that. Go ahead, sir.
Well, they're using these underhanded, sneaky, coercive tactics in order to get people to render that free will consent. Because again, they really cannot do anything to you without your consent.
And it says here on the letter, under the license, you are authorized to manufacture the product, the jab vax mRNA, which is indicated for active immunization to prevent the current virus 2019 caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome, also known as SARS-CoV-2, in individuals 16 years of older. So it's approval to manufacture it, but not to actually take it.
You see it? Okay, so I want to point out a couple of terms that we hear used a lot thrown around when it comes to this. We hear the term safe. Safe means protected from any danger, harm, or loss. Effective means producing the result that is wanted or intended, producing a successful result. So this thing does not protect anyone from anything. Otherwise, people who have already been inoculated would not keep getting sick. It does not prevent anything. Prevention means that once you have this inoculation, you cannot get sick or catch that thing. That is not true either. So exactly, on the face of the words that they use, they're committing fraud. You feel me?
I do.
Their statements are flat fraudulent. And because they put them into the public light, because they print these statements, because they issue these statements, there is telecommunications fraud, because you're using the airwaves to transmit this lie.
So now I know your letter, it speaks to essentially giving the same, I won't say pressure, but you're speaking legal law to those who understand exactly what you're saying. But would that stop them from firing someone?
Well, this is the thing. That's why I said it has to be submitted in a particular way. Now, you're going to
Okay.
submit it to those three people, and you sending it the way you
What was
sending
those
it
three people
certified.
again?
It is your supervisor, the head of the department, and the legal department for that company that you work at. And the reason that you're sending it to all three of those people is because it only takes one representative of a company in order to sign that signature card to receive that letter. And now that company is bound. See, our postal service is a governmental entity.
That's why you mail it.
Yes. So
So
now we're gonna
don't
no.
scan it and send it to them.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No, we ain't gonna scan or email nothing. We want their signature. Because once they sign for it, now they're bound by the terms of that agreement. And if they go outside of that agreement, so they're gonna rate basically they have to give you your religious exemption. And if they don't, they're in about 7 or 8 more kinds of law trouble. And all of these things because you are the party. And this is what the protection for them firing you or terminating you is. That is reprisals. If I submit a letter and you don't like it and now you fire me, that's a wrongful termination.
Wow.
You terminate me wrongfully, I will sue your ass, work up your job, get my check and my settlement. And I want to put this out there. I live in Florida. It is an at-will state. I have companies in Florida. You cannot, I don't care what these people tell you, you cannot randomly fire an employee. If I fire an employee, especially one who has had issuance of a handbook, if I fire that employee and I did not follow the procedures that are laid out in that handbook, I haven't had any sit downs with them to discuss their performance. There are no performance reviews or evaluations that are signed from that employee on record showing them being negligent at their responsibilities at that job. I can't just fire them. That ain't how this works. I'll have the weight of the Securities and Exchange Commission hitting me in my face. Even in an at-will state. As a matter of fact, if you are living in an at-will state, look up wrongful termination lawsuits in your at-will state. I guarantee you'll find them. See, we let the employers tell us what we can and can't do as the employees. Why would they tell you you could sue them for doing you wrong? They wouldn't tell you that. That doesn't make any sense. Now they can't do you wrong.
Now I know that you curated this letter. Where could the people find this letter so they can have some power, some leverage, some information, in case they want, total control and ownership of their own bodies instead of being
Yes.
forced under mandate, which we know
Yes.
not of the law. Where could they go to get this information? Where could they go to get this letter?
I have a bit.ly link attached to my Instagram. I have a bit.ly link attached to my Instagram. And what I'll do is I'll give you guys the bit.ly link
Can you
here.
put that in the chat for us?
Let me see here. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'll put that in the chat. I'll type it up in the chat here now.
Okay.
I'll drop the bit.
And also, I got your website popped up. I don't know if you see that. And that same letter, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Jones is referring to is called the assumption of liability. He also, the first part of this video was stating about the trust. He does trust consultations for you guys to do that as well. So he has a lot of things that you can link from his Instagram. And for you guys who are just tuning in, this is his Instagram, the Then Jones Agency. If you guys want to look up and follow him on Instagram, because what we're doing right now is we're just making sure that you have a choice. You have a choice and you're not being pressured. You're not getting scared. Because when I found out, there's a lot of us that are afraid of losing our careers, jobs, pensions, stock options, etc., due to the current situation we're in and taking the jab. And a lot of us, or some of us rather, do not want to take it, or we want more information before we put those things inside of our body. So Mr. Jones has curated a letter that will assist you and pushing back? And if so, they fire you wrongfully because you presented this letter, you can sue that ass for wrongful termination. That's what
sir.
we're breaking down,
Yes.
because we want to make sure you guys have the information to combat this. Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody knows they do not have the right. I want everybody to understand this. If you do not understand anything else that I've said, I want you to understand this. If they could do these things to you without your consent, they would have done them already. That's why they're threatening your living. That's why they're threatening your accesses. That's why they're doing these things, because you have to willingly consent to these things. And they know it. I want to point out something. The only reason a person goes to jail, the only reason anyone is in prison in America is because they agreed to the contract. I'll make sure everybody understands that. Everything that goes on is under contract. Everything is under contract. So we have to make sure if nothing else, we understand contract law and negotiations, because these people have to be willing to negotiate. Otherwise, they're belligerent. And see, the creditor can never be belligerent.
Now, we know that a lot of these organizations, large corporations, have a team of lawyers. Do you believe that there is any loopholes or gray areas that they could try to depict through the letter and say, oh, right here is a loophole, here's a weak spot that we can essentially use against it?
Okay. Well, this is the thing. Is that corporation going to expend the funds to fight, to put out, and to worry about the marketing? Because see, anytime something hits the court system, it becomes public record.
Definitely.
They don't want nobody to know they violating all these damn codes. They don't want nobody to know they violating all these laws, man. That's why you send it to the legal department. Because once the legal department goes into Title 41, once they go into Title 29, they're like, you know what? Let's just get them an exemption. Because if it makes it onto the public record, now they have class action civil lawsuits against them. And they got 47, 57 different people suing you. 5 or 6 attorneys coming after you at the same time. They don't want that smoke. Remember, the bottom line for them is everything. We're always going to attack the bottom line. We're going to attack the money, because that's what they hear. And at the end of this, you ain't really trying to sue them. The only reason you're going to sue them is if they don't give you what you want. And all you want them to do is leave you alone. Get out your face trying to pressure you into something you don't want to do.
Now,
they don't want that fraud to be out there. I'm going to tell you. These people commit fraud all the time. That is why they settle out of court, because a court settlement never makes it to the public record.
Yeah, that's true. Let me ask you this. Now, not asking if you took the jab, against the jab, or for the jab. What is your take on it, though?
My take on that whole dynamic.
What is your thoughts on it?
Okay, my take on that whole dynamic is this. I don't care either way. And the reason I say I don't care either way is because you walk out the door and get hit by lightning. No person decides when you live or die or how you going to live or die. That's not even in the hands of man. That's in the hands of the Almighty. So it's not a fear-based dynamic with me. My issue is the fact that you would infringe on people's natural rights in order to make them do this thing. See, these are the things. The fact that you get pushed around. You can't just push people around and make them use fear, use coercion and threats and force and all this kind of stuff to put people into these situations. And it's only because they don't know they have recourses. People don't know how to air their grievances. If they did, this stuff wouldn't go this way. I said, I'm in Florida. And y'all know Florida COVID numbers is through the roof right now, ain't they?
Yes.
Y'all know why Florida COVID numbers through the roof, and they are really launching a serious marketing campaign against Florida and Texas. Why? Because Florida's governor and Texas governor said we're not going to issue any type of mandates that say people have to surrender their natural rights. See, Florida and Texas alike have some stipulations in the Constitution. In Florida, it's Article 1, Section 2, as a natural person. And so you have a whole lot of rights as a natural person on the land. but they do not tell people this. They put you in a situation, and most of us are born into this not understanding what the law looks like. We got our understanding, our concepts from the law from our parents, and then we go through the education system who absolutely teaches us nothing when it comes to what your position is. The school board is two school boards in Florida who voted to put in a mask mandate for their schools, and the governor has withheld the school board's pay. You do not get the right to do whatever you want. I don't care if you're scared. You don't get to step on somebody else's right because of it.
Can I show you something, Mr. Jones, very quickly?
Sure, no problem.
I think this will be very interesting. It says here that Texas Health Resources will make the jab vax mandatory, and it also states that, if you're reading along with me, that the Texas Health Resources is joining other Texas hospital groups and making the jab vax mandatory for all employees, and like the flu vax, a condition of employment.
I want to point out again, when we go back to the legal definition of a vaccine and the legal definition of a mandate. See, this is what they like to do, play them word games. They want to color it. The flu is actually a vaccine. It comes from inert parts of the flu, deadened parts of the causative agent. This thing that they're trying to use does not come from deadened parts of the causative agent. That's those word games again. But if it did not matter, there would not be a separation in law for what those two things are.
It says here that the policy goes to effect on September 10th,
What do
and
policy say?
non-employees, including, excuse me?
What do policy? I define legally policy.
Mm-mm.
Policy. That is not a law. Policy just means we're going to do it expediency. We're going to put it out quickly and make sure everybody has access to it fast. That is not a law. That is not a statute. Nobody voted on that. That part.
And they're requiring, it says, physicians, practice providers, medical staff, students, vendors, contractors who work at any of the Texas Health location will need to have and receive full doses by that date.
I will put it to you like this. It will be quite a few of them who go along, and because they feel like their job is threatened. So we got to remember, these people know how to threaten you, because if you're a physician, you're in the medical industry, how much do you owe in student loans? Yeah, that part. What do there it is.
A policy, a definite course of action adopted for the sake of expediency, course of action adopted and pursued by a government, ruler, political party, etc., actions or procedure conforming to or considered with reference to prudence or expediency.
That ain't got nothing to do with no law. Nothing to do with the law. That's what I'm talking about. They use the fact that people don't know the legal terms, the legal definitions of these things, and then they slide them by you. So, oh, well, it's our policy. Show me where in the law it says that. They can't, because it doesn't. That's why they use policy. That's why they use the term policy. If it was an actual law that they could do this, they wouldn't be asking you. They would just be doing it.
Exactly.
They're asking because they need your informed consent. Legally, they cannot do anything to you without it. So what they do is they present marketing campaigns, promotional campaigns, social pressures, economic pressures. I equate it to the chessboard. If any chess players are in here, you guys may appreciate this. In order to force a pawn into position, you must have 5 things. You must have authority, represented in the king, authority in motion, represented in the queen, faith or belief, represented in the bishop, physical force or power, represented in the knight, and financial means, represented in the rook. So their dynamic is to force you into a position where you choose what they want you to choose. But just like any game of chess, you do not have to move there.
I like what you said about the social pressures, because there's a lot of people who are pro jab. A lot of times I get into conversation with my friends about it, And I tell them I'm not pro jab or anti jab. I just want more information before I put anything inside my body. And I guess with that being said, how bad do you think it can actually get? I mean, just from your wisdom and your knowledge, how bad do you think this whole situation can actually get?
Well, I'm gonna tell you like this. I got my guns. I got a 4-wheel drive. I got a boat. I got my bug out bag. I got camel pack. I'm for real. I'm serious. Because
Okay.
when it comes to the dynamic of them, consider that people will be patented after this. This is the new slavery. How desperate are they to make people slaves? What extent did they go to before to make people slaves?
Good point.
So yeah, I'm prepping, and I know I sound like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but in some of these dynamics, once you go to reading these laws and you understand what these people can and can't do, you'll put your tinfoil hat on too. And when you're friends, when you're having that discussion in the social pressures, this is what I do. I refer all of them to Myriad Genetics v Pathology 2013, because you want to argue the health dynamic. You want to argue whether people are going to be safe and healthy and whether they can return to normal life. I want to let you know that these people are patenting you as a product and you no longer have access to human life, so, or to human rights. So how closely are you going to get to normalcy again? Will you ever get back to what they considered normal before? I think not. Because after this jab, they don't need your informed consent for anything. I don't need informed consent to take my TV off the wall and break it on the floor if I want to. I would advise that everybody here um, become familiar with the one USC codes. The one USC codes. Look, I see you, Miss Curly Girl. I know that's right. Get prepping, girl. Get the prepping. Because, yeah, these people don't do right. No, they don't do right, man. There's a reason that the good old boys live in the middle of the woods and they out there training their kids in martial arts and how to shoot. See, these people have been threatening our freedoms for a very, very, very long time under the guise of corporation. And if we consider the fact that, let's look at solar energy. Let's look at solar energy. Solar energy is a dynamic by which people can unplug from the electrical grid. So they made it illegal for you to unplug from the electrical grid. So even though you may grab solar panels and put them on your house, you still have to be connected to their electrical. They made it illegal for you to collect rainwater. Why? Well, you don't need
Because they
water
can't
for this.
because they can't profit from it.
Come on. Come on, there it goes. And they infringe and impede and impact people's rights on a daily basis. But that's only because people don't know what their rights are. There is there's a thing called a schedule of fees. Anytime you deal with the judicial system, if you have a registered schedule of fees, they literally have to pay you to appear in court. Everything is commerce. Everything is commerce in this country. We got to know where we are when it comes to commerce and how we utilize those commerce laws for our benefit. But yeah, that's why we did the definitions so that when they use slick and fanciful language like policy or mandate, that's why we put that language in there so they know exactly what a policy is, because half the people typing up these papers don't even know what the legal definition of a policy is. They're do boys, they're doing what they told. Consider the fact that at the job that you work or the career that you work at now, how far up the chain is your information? Are you sitting in the boardroom when they make decisions for the corporation? You just know a new policy came out. You just know a new dynamic by the way they're running their company came out. You don't know who decided on it, why they decided on it, or any of that stuff. So these are the dynamics that we really have to start to examine. And this is, once you go through this part, because I know what this has really done is awakened a lot of people in our society to the law. There's people are starting to go into the law so much they're crashing legal servers. That is a
Quick
good
question
thing.
for you, Mr. Jones. It says here, I really want you to, if you could, why is it that if we get the jab that we're legally no longer human? Why is that?
Well, because that Supreme Court decision, you can't patent a thing from nature. Humans are a thing from nature. An apple is a thing from nature, but once you change that apple, it's no longer a thing from nature. That's your product. So this, by the same way they change a apple and they have the Granny Smith and the Golden Delicious and the Snapdragon, by their genetic manipulation of these fruits to create this version of a fruit, they can have a patent on it. Apply that same genetic restructuring to a person. You're a product now. That's why whenever it comes to one of these dynamics where they're arguing efficacy and they're arguing social dynamics and they're arguing safety and they're arguing morality, I point back to that myriad decision. Because none of these things y'all saying are getting you out of the dynamic that you're a patented product. I don't care if you take the
Let me
shot.
point something out to you, sir.
Go ahead.
I'm still on that same news report, and it says here, as the jab continue, or as the virus continues to spread throughout our communities, requiring the jab is the responsible step. The jab is safe, it works, and it's a step we can take to protect our community. Safety is always our number one priority, and this is again coming from the THR, which is the, again, let me go back here, Texas Health Resources. And that's what they're saying. They saying that it's actually safe.
Okay, now we're gonna go right back down here to safe. Protection from any danger, harm, or loss. So no one who has taken the jab has caught this disease. No one who has taken the jab, 100% of the people who have taken this jab are all safe. Nobody has died. Nobody has had adverse health reactions. Nobody has any adverse effects from this jab. If they cannot say that, then it is not safe. That part. That's what I'm talking about. They play these games and they throw these terms out, but there's a legal definition for this term. The social definition and the legal definition are two completely different things. And when we examine the social definition, like let's take, for example, the social definition of a woman currently. And this is just in no apparent, it's just to point out the dynamic. And this is not against or for any group or anything like that as a disclaimer. It is just to point out the dynamic of a social definition and a legal definition. So the social definition of a woman is a female. So a guy dressed up in his, a guy who lives his life as a woman and changes all his documents, and he's geared and branded as a woman. He walks around in society and lives as a woman. That's the social definition. But the minute he gets arrested and he gets booked into the legal system, he will be housed with the men. Social definition, legal definition. You can do whatever you want to walking around in the social world. They don't care about that. But once you butt up against the law, that's where they start to have problems. And it don't matter what you think anymore. It matters what the law say in black and white.
Wow. I just want to point out again, Mr. Jones' Instagram, also his website. On his Instagram is a link for you guys, so you can get that a letter of a liability.
Assumption of liability. Yeah.
Assumption of liability. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, because you want
it's
them
right
to
here on the bottom.
Yeah, we don't want to say, no, we're not going to negotiate with you. That ain't how we do this. We're willing to negotiate. If I'm required to do this, then you're required to do that. That is a negotiation. If they can renegotiate your employment contract in the middle of your employment, then that means you have an ability to negotiate as well. Because that's what they're doing, renegotiating your employment. And unless that handbook that you got when you first started working there, unless you signed a document when you first started working there that said they could change your employment at will, and you can't do anything about it. Oh, no, 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 that's not legal. That's not lawful or legal. And there's a difference between those two. The difference between lawful and legal. I ain't gonna, you know what? This is a little homework for everybody. Everybody who hear me, I want y'all to find the difference, the legal definition, the difference between lawful and legal. Because it is a difference. I'm a big
You
fan
know,
of own. Yeah, I'm a big fan of owning information because once you
well,
lay your
let's
eyes
talk
on
about
it,
it. Let's talk about it. This is coming from the lawjrank.org.
uh-huh.
It says that the term lawful and legal differ in the former complex and substance of law, whereas the latter alludes to the form of law. A lawful act is authorized, sanctioned, or not forbidden by law. A legal act is performed in accordance with the forms and usage of law or in a technical manner. Can you break that down for us?
Okay, lawful. It looks like law. Well, it looks like law, but it may not really be law. Like this mandate, like they throw policy out there. It alludes to the form of law, but it is not law. The legal, that is where we're at in the technicalities. So when they say effective, and that might be a lawful statement, but it damn sure ain't legally accurate. When they say safe, that could be genuinely from my perspective or from his perspective, it could be safe, but lawfully or legally, that's not the same thing. You feel me?
I'm definitely breaking it down because as I'm reading, a lawful act is authorized, sanctioned, or not forbidden by law. A legal act is performed in accordance with the forms and usage of law. You know, it's kind of a tongue twister in the sense that most people won't be able to decipher and break this down and truly understand.
Yeah, that's why they write it that way. It's called, that's what legalese. Legalese. That's why they do this in order to deceive people out of their actual rights. That's why when a officer approaches a person, he goes, "You won't obey his lawful orders." Ain't nobody say nothing about his legal orders. They said lawful, and we see that alludes to the form of law. Yes, sir. This is how this works. Look, everybody's gonna start reading their contracts a little bit closer now, ain't they?
They sure is.
Everybody, you should never sign anything if you have not read it all of the way. And I mean from the start to the finish. If you ain't got time to read that whole thing, don't sign it. Do not sign it if you don't have time to read it. I like literally anytime I'm dealing with contracts, I literally go to the office with a highlighter and a clipboard. I want this printed. I don't want no digital contract. You better print it. I gotta print this, and I'm gonna sit down, and me and this contract, I'm gonna sit down with me a cup of coffee, and we're gonna have us a little meeting. And I'm gonna go through that contract with my red pen and my yellow highlighter. Red pen is to strike a thing. When they offer you a contract, you do know you can strike shit out of that contract.
Definitely. It's part of the negotiation.
Literally. That's the thing. They have taken the dynamic, or they've put out into the dynamic the perception that the people do not have a right to negotiate with them. They just got to go along and follow. And it's intellectually dishonest. That's what it is.
Wow.
Because
Mr.
they
Jones.
lawyers,
Oh, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
sir. Go ahead.
Well, they're lawyers at these departments. They're the ones who are drafting up these damn documents. They know the difference. That's why they word it this way. And you can tell when they don't know, because I've seen some documents where a lawyer has drafted it for the company on a requirement, and I've seen it where the board of directors sat down and tried to draft it on their own. An attorney will use very, very specific language as to not go under the lawful but stay under the legal. But see, regular people have a social definition, and they use that social definition in their documents. I know it sucks, doesn't it?
I'm speechless. I usually have a lot to say, and most of my subscribers know I have a lot to say, but tonight I'm blown away.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones, I just want to formally thank you for joining me here this evening, giving this great information. Again, I'm going to share your social media with your IG. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you want leverage, if you want information, Mr. Jones has a link on his Instagram. His Instagram is Then Jones Agency. And that link will take you to his website where you can go and download the assumption of liability. This is the weapon. This is the leverage you can use in case you want total control over your body and have some pushback to your employer or any other entity like schools, dealing with your career in any sorts. That way they can't pressure you and mandate you because you're just not knowing the information.
And the thing is, by submitting this the way that we have it set up, if you follow the rules, you're going to get a religious exemption, period. That's just what it is. And you've already crafted your religious exemption. It's in the document. So, yeah, we don't have to worry about them coming with all of that stupid stuff. Because at the end of the day, we want them to just go away. Stop bothering you. That's it. Just get out my face. Leave me alone. If you make, and you can, I want to put this out as well. If they create what is considered a hostile work environment, that is illegal as well.
Because that's a form of threat too.
Intimidation
as well. And what you guys are seeing on your screen is Mr. Jones' curated letter of the assumption of liability, which will give you leverage against your organization and business and school, to let them know that you have rights and you know your rights, and that the mandates and policies that they're putting in place is not the law.
Exactly. And the thing is, they're not going to alter the law in this matter. And I'm going to explain why. Because the wealthy in our society use this law. There's no way they're going to let them change no stuff that keeps them protected. They'll let you have it first. They're not going to destabilize their system for you.
Mr. Jones, we're coming to the end here. I just want to, again, thank you for your time. And for you guys who are just joining in, you missed a wealth of knowledge. But if you simply just rewind the video, we have references. We have letters presented. I'm also giving those free credit letters. This is a treat to the people who joined us here this evening. I would like to officially thank Mr. Jones for his time, his education, his knowledge, and his wisdom. This is going to help a lot of people to push back against their employers and get those medical and mostly those religious exemptions.
Yeah, you're gonna get a religious exemption.
Yes, sir.
This is the thing. If one of your employers tell you we don't have a religious exemption, you pull up the Constitution in that state, because every state constitution has the word God in it.
And as we showed here, we popped up the California as an example out of the, I believe there's anywhere between 6 to 8 states that are stating they don't have any. How many?
It's 6.
Oh, 6. 6 states there are saying that they don't have religion exemptions, but it's there in their preamble as well as the state constitution. So they have to abide by their constitutions. They can't just change the constitution because of a so-called pandemic. So I just want to thank some of my loyal subscribers here. We got Primex, we got Miss Curly Girl, I see some new people in the chat as well. We got Brandy Gillens. Nice to see you, sister, here this evening. A lot of people, this is going to be a treat. And again, for those of you who know people who are being pressured, coerced, threatened, please share this information. Please share Mr. Jones' IG as well as his letter. That way they can have some leverage. Again, Mr. Jones, thank you for showing up this evening. I do appreciate your time, sir.
You're very welcome, brother.
If you have any other information, Mr. Jones, any last comments, please go ahead and proceed.
I want everybody to be able to walk in their own mind, walk in your own body. You are a human being. These people do not have the right. They do not have the right to do these things to you. They're acting lawfully, not legally.
Well, family, that's the end, Mr. Jones. Again, I would love to have you again. We can talk about some other topics.
Definitely.
But that's it for tonight. Again, if you guys want that information, just rewind the video and I put it in the chat with those free credit letters. And of course, Mr. Jones' assumption of liability. Thank you, sir. And on the way out, we're just going to rock here a little bit. And Mr. Jones, if you can just stay a couple of minutes after, I'm going to talk to you. But a couple of minutes, we're going to listen to some music on the way out.
All right. Definitely, brother.
Good evening, everyone. You missed a treat here tonight. We had Mr. Jones. I want to thank everybody for joining. Make sure that your family members, your friends, gets the information that myself and Mr. Jones has given out. Please go to his IG at Then Jones Agency. Click that link at the bottom to get that assumption of liability letter. This is Financial Literacy 101. Learn money and be inspired. You guys have a great and wonderful evening. I'm out.